The millionaire pays a woman to have his child, but when the baby is born, he discovers a terrifying secret. Ricardo Almeida, a 48-year-old millionaire businessman, had always wanted an heir. After a messy divorce and failed relationships, he decided to take an unconventional route. He paid a woman to carry his child through surrogacy. The chosen woman was Anna, a young woman living in extreme poverty. With no prospects, she accepted the offer of $1 million to change her life. Throughout the pregnancy, everything seemed to be going well, and Ricardo eagerly awaited the birth of his child. But on the day of delivery, something went terribly wrong. The baby was born with a rare genetic condition that indicated Ricardo couldn't be the biological father. Confused and furious, he demanded an immediate DNA test. The results were shocking. The child was not his. Stunned, Ricardo pressured the fertility clinic for answers. After an investigation, the truth was revealed. A laboratory error had swapped his embryo with another man's. But the biggest twist was yet to come. The baby's real father was an internationally wanted criminal who, upon discovering his child's birth, took legal action to claim him. Overnight, Ricardo found himself in a desperate legal battle, and even worse, at the center of a dangerous game where money and power might not be enough to save him. Ricardo Almeida stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse office, gazing out at the Manhattan skyline. The city stretched before him, a testament to human ambition and the power of wealth. At 48, he had conquered the business world, amassing a fortune that would last several lifetimes. Yet, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the urban landscape, Ricardo felt an emptiness that no amount of money could fill. His reflection stared back at him from the glass, salt and pepper hair meticulously styled, designer suit tailored to perfection. The face of success, they called him in the financial magazines. But behind the confident facade lay a man grappling with a profound sense of incompleteness. Ricardo's mind wandered to the events that had led him to this moment. The bitter divorce that had left him wary of love. The string of failed relationships that followed, each one reinforcing his belief that true companionship was beyond his reach. But there was one dream he refused to relinquish, the desire for an heir, someone to carry on his legacy and give purpose to the empire he had built. With a sigh, he turned away from the window and walked to his desk. A manila folder lay open, revealing the profile of a young woman named Ana Martinez. Her photo showed a pretty face with large expressive eyes that seemed to hold both hope and desperation. Ricardo picked up the file, studying it for what felt like the 100th time. Ana was 25, living in a rundown neighborhood in the Bronx. She had dropped out of college to care for her ailing mother, working multiple jobs to make ends meet. Her background check was clean, her medical history impeccable. She was, in the words of the surrogacy agency, the perfect candidate. Ricardo's finger traced the edge of the photo. Was he really going to do this? Pay a stranger to carry his child? The idea still felt surreal, like something out of a science fiction novel. But he had exhausted all other options. At his age, the chances of finding a suitable partner and starting a family the traditional way were slim. A soft chime from his computer interrupted his thoughts. It was a reminder of his upcoming appointment with Ana. In just 30 minutes, he would meet the woman who might become the mother of his child. Ricardo straightened his tie and took a deep breath, steeling himself for what lay ahead. The ride to the agency's office was a blur of city lights and honking horns. Ricardo's chauffeur, sensing his employer's tense mood, remained silent throughout the journey. As they pulled up to the nondescript building, Ricardo felt a flutter of anxiety in his stomach. This was it, the moment that could change everything. Inside, the agency's waiting room was a study in calculated comfort. Soft music played overhead, and the walls were adorned with tasteful artwork depicting happy families. Ricardo nodded to the receptionist, who ushered him into a private meeting room. Ana was already there, perched on the edge of a plush armchair. She stood as Ricardo entered, her nervousness evident in the way she clutched her purse. Up close, she looked even younger than her photo suggested, with a vulnerability that made Ricardo's heart twinge with unexpected sympathy. "Mr. Almeida," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "it's an honor to meet you." Ricardo gestured for her to sit and took the chair opposite her. "Please, call me Ricardo, and the honor is mine, Ms. Martinez." "Ana," she corrected, offering a tentative smile. For a moment, they sat in awkward silence, the weight of what they were about to discuss hanging heavy in the air. Ricardo cleared his throat, deciding to address the elephant in the room head-on. "Ana, I want to thank you for considering this arrangement. I know it's not a decision to be taken lightly." Anna's fingers twisted in her lap. "No, it's not, but I have to be honest with you, Mr. Ricardo. This could change my life, my mother's life. We've been struggling for so long, and the money you're offering—" She trailed off, a hint of shame coloring her cheeks. Ricardo leaned forward, his voice gentle. "There's no need to feel embarrassed. This is a business transaction, yes, but it's also so much more. You would be giving me the greatest gift imaginable, a child of my own." Anna's eyes met his, searching for sincerity. Whatever she saw there seemed to reassure her. Her shoulders relaxed slightly, and she nodded. "Can I ask you something?" she ventured. When Ricardo nodded, she continued, "Why me? I'm sure you had many candidates to choose from." Ricardo considered his answer carefully. "Your profile stood out. You've faced adversity with grace and determination. Those are qualities I'd want my child to have." A ghost of a smile played on Anna's lips. "And the fact that I look nothing like you? That I'm, well, not from your world?" "Diversity is strength," Ricardo replied without hesitation. "My child will have opportunities you and I never dreamed of. But I want them to understand the value of hard work, of perseverance. Your background, Anna, is an asset, not a liability." Anna's eyes glistened with unshed tears. She blinked rapidly, composing herself. "Thank you for saying that. It means a lot." The conversation flowed more easily after that. They discussed the medical procedures involved, the legal agreements, the timeline. Ricardo found himself impressed by Anna's intelligence and quiet dignity. She asked thoughtful questions, demonstrating a maturity beyond her years. As their meeting drew to a close, Ricardo felt a sense of certainty settling over him. This was right. This was the path forward. "Anna," he said, rising to his feet, "I know we've only just met, but I want you to know that I'm committed to this process. Not just financially, but emotionally. If you decide to move forward, you won't be alone in this journey." Anna stood as well, squaring her shoulders. "I appreciate that, Ricardo, and I want you to know that if I do this, I'll give it my all. Your child, our child, will be loved and cared for every moment they're with me." They shook hands, the contact lingering a moment longer than necessary. As Anna gathered her things to leave, Ricardo felt a spark of hope ignite in his chest. For the first time in years, the future didn't seem quite so empty. Little did either of them know that this moment, this seemingly straightforward agreement, would set in motion a chain of events that would test them both in ways they could never have imagined. The child they dreamed of bringing into the world would become the center of a storm that would shake the foundations of Ricardo's carefully constructed life and force Anna to confront the true cost of her decision. As the door closed behind Anna, Ricardo turned to look out the window at the city below. The lights twinkled like stars, full of promise and possibility. He allowed himself a small smile, unaware that the universe was already conspiring to turn his world upside down. The months that followed were a whirlwind of activity and anticipation. Ricardo threw himself into preparations with the same fervor he applied to his business dealings. A wing of his sprawling Manhattan apartment was transformed into a nursery fit for royalty, with hand-painted murals, custom-made furniture, and enough toys to stock a small store. Anna, meanwhile, navigated the early stages of pregnancy with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. The morning sickness hit her hard, but she refused to complain, determined to fulfill her end of the bargain with grace. Ricardo, true to his word, spared no expense in ensuring her comfort and well-being. Their relationship, initially formal and distant, began to evolve. Ricardo found himself looking forward to their weekly check-ins, which gradually shifted from stilted conversations about medical appointments to genuine exchanges about their lives and hopes for the future. One crisp autumn afternoon, 4 months into the pregnancy, Ricardo invited Anna to his penthouse for tea. As she stepped off the private elevator, her eyes widened at the opulence surrounding her. "This is incredible," she breathed, taking in the panoramic views and exquisite artwork. Ricardo, watching her reaction, felt a sudden pang of self-consciousness. "It's a bit much, isn't it?" Anna turned to him, a wry smile on her face. "Just a bit. But hey, if you've got it, flaunt it, right?" Her candor surprised a laugh out of him. "I suppose so, though I have to admit it all feels a bit hollow sometimes." They settled into the plush sofas in the living room, a spread of delicate pastries and fine china before them. Anna's hand rested unconsciously on her slightly rounded belly, a gesture that did not go unnoticed by Ricardo. "How are you feeling?" he asked, pouring her a cup of herbal tea. "Better, actually. The nausea's finally letting up." She accepted the cup with a grateful nod. "I had my first craving the other day. Pickles dipped in chocolate sauce. Disgusting, right?" Ricardo chuckled. "I'll make sure to stock up." A comfortable silence fell between them as they sipped their tea. Ricardo found his gaze drawn to Anna's belly, marveling at the miracle growing within. She caught him looking and smiled softly. "It still doesn't feel quite real, does it?" she murmured. "No, it doesn't," Ricardo agreed. He hesitated, then asked, "Anna, may I?" Understanding his unspoken request, she nodded and guided his hand to her stomach. Ricardo held his breath, palm pressed gently against the subtle swell. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a flutter, so faint he might have imagined it. Ricardo's eyes widened. "Was that?" Anna nodded, her own eyes shining. "I've been feeling little movements for a few days now. The doctor says it's still too early for strong kicks, but it's incredible," Ricardo whispered, overcome with emotion. He withdrew his hand reluctantly, clearing his throat to regain his composure. Anna studied him, her head tilted slightly. "You know, when we first met, I wasn't sure what to make of you. So I thought you might be cold, detached. But you're not like that at all, are you?" Ricardo considered her words. "I've been accused of being those things in the past," he admitted. "Perhaps I was, for a time. Success can be isolating, but this..." He gestured between them to her belly. "It's changing me, I can feel it." "For the better, I hope," Anna said softly. "Definitely for the better." As the afternoon wore on, their conversation deepened. Anna spoke of her childhood in the Bronx, of dreams deferred, and the struggle to keep hope alive in the face of constant setbacks. Ricardo, in turn, shared stories of his own humble beginnings, the drive that had propelled him to the top, and the personal cost of his ambition. "I was married once," he revealed, swirling the last of his tea in his cup. "It ended badly. She said I cared more about my empire than I did about her. Maybe she was right." Anna reached out, placing her hand over his. "But you're trying to change that now, aren't you? This baby, it's a chance to do things differently." Ricardo nodded, a lump forming in his throat. "Yes, it is. I want to be a good father, Anna. I want to give this child everything I never had. Not just materially, but emotionally." "I believe you will," Anna said with conviction. "The fact that you're worried about it shows you care." As the sun began to set, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, Ricardo walked Anna to the elevator. There was a newfound ease between them, a sense of shared purpose that went beyond their initial agreement. "Thank you for today," Anna said as the elevator doors opened. "It means a lot getting to know you like this." Ricardo smiled warmly. "The pleasure was mine, truly. We'll do this again soon." Anna nodded, stepping into the elevator. As the doors began to close, she added, "Oh, and Ricardo, I think you're going to be a wonderful father." The words echoed in Ricardo's mind long after Anna had gone. He wandered through his vast apartment, feeling less alone than he had in years. In the nursery, he paused before the empty crib, imagining the tiny life that would soon fill it. For the first time in a long time, Ricardo Almeida felt truly hopeful about the future. But fate, as it often does, had other plans. The following week, Ricardo was in the middle of a board meeting when his phone buzzed with an urgent message from Anna. His heart racing, he excused himself and rushed to call her back. "Ricardo," Anna's voice was tight with worry. "I'm at the doctor's office. They found something on the ultrasound. They want to do more tests." Ricardo felt the blood drain from his face. "What kind of tests? What did they find?" "They're not sure yet, but they mentioned genetic abnormalities." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Ricardo gripped the edge of his desk, struggling to process the information. "I'm on my way," he said, already moving towards the door. "Which hospital?" The next few days were a blur of medical jargon, tense waiting rooms, and sleepless nights. Ricardo pulled every string he could, bringing in top specialists from around the country. Anna underwent a battery of tests, each one more invasive than the last. Finally, on a gloomy Friday afternoon, they sat together in a sterile consultation room waiting for the results. Anna's hand found Ricardo's squeezing tightly. He returned the pressure, silently vowing to stand by her no matter what news came. The doctor entered, her face a mask of professional neutrality. "Mr. Almeida, Ms. Martinez," she began, taking a seat across from them. "We've received the results of the amniocentesis and genetic screening." Ricardo held his breath, feeling Anna tense beside him. "The fetus does indeed show signs of a rare genetic condition," the doctor continued. "It's called Treacher-Collins syndrome. It primarily affects the development of bones and tissues in the face." Anna gasped softly. Ricardo fought to keep his voice steady as he asked, "What does this mean for the baby? What are the implications?" The doctor leaned forward, her tone compassionate but direct. "Children with Treacher-Collins can face numerous challenges. They may have breathing difficulties, hearing loss, and distinctive facial features that can require multiple surgeries throughout their lives. However, cognitive development is typically not affected." Ricardo's mind raced, trying to process the information. "But with proper medical care, the child can lead a normal life. Many individuals with Treacher-Collins go on to live fulfilling lives, yes," the doctor nodded. "But I must caution you, the road ahead will not be easy. There will be significant medical expenses and potential social challenges." Anna, who had been silent until now, spoke up. Is there any chance the diagnosis is wrong?" The doctor hesitated, an odd expression crossing her face. "Actually, there is something else we need to discuss." She paused as if searching for the right words. "Mr. Almeida, given the specific genetic markers we've identified, it appears that you are not the biological father of this child." The words hung in the air, heavy and impossible. Ricardo felt as if he'd been punched in the gut. He turned to Anna, searching her face for some explanation, some denial of what he'd just heard. But Anna looked as shocked as he felt, her face pale and confused. That's not possible," she whispered. Ricardo is the only..." The doctor held up a hand. "I understand this is distressing news. We'll need to run further tests to confirm, but the initial results are quite clear. There seems to have been some kind of mix-up with the embryos at the fertility clinic." Ricardo stood abruptly, his chair screeching against the floor. "This is unacceptable," he growled, years of boardroom authority seeping into his voice. "I want answers, now." As the doctor tried to calm him, promising a full investigation, Ricardo's mind whirled with the implications. The child he had dreamed of, planned for, already loved, wasn't his. And worse, it carried a genetic condition that would require a lifetime of care. He looked at Anna, saw the tears streaming down her face, and felt a surge of protective instinct. Whatever happened next, he realized, they were in this together. The journey they had embarked on had taken an unexpected and frightening turn, but Ricardo Almeida was not a man who abandoned his commitments easily. Little did he know that this revelation was only the beginning. The true identity of the biological father and the danger it would bring into their lives was still waiting to be uncovered. As Ricardo left the hospital that day, arm around a shaken Anna, he could not have imagined the storm that was about to engulf them both. The days following the shocking revelation at the hospital were a maelstrom of emotions and frantic activity. Ricardo, his world turned upside down, channeled his turmoil into action. He assembled a team of the best lawyers money could buy, determined to get to the bottom of the embryo mix-up and hold the fertility clinic accountable. Anna, meanwhile, retreated into herself. The apartment Ricardo had rented for her during the Keeks pregnancy became a sanctuary and a prison. She alternated between periods of numb disbelief and overwhelming guilt, despite knowing rationally that she wasn't to blame for the mix-up. One evening, about a week after the fateful doctor's appointment, Ricardo found himself standing outside Anna's door. He hesitated before knocking, unsure of his reception. Their interactions since the news had been stilted, fraught with unspoken tension. Anna opened the door, her eyes red-rimmed and hair disheveled. She looked surprised to see him. "Ricardo, I wasn't expecting you." He held up a bag of takeout. "I thought you might be hungry. May I come in?" She nodded, stepping aside to let him enter. The apartment was dimly lit, curtains drawn against the fading daylight. Ricardo's heart clenched at the sight of pregnancy books and catalogues strewn across the coffee table, a poignant reminder of the future they had been planning. They sat at the small dining table, the aroma of hot food filling the air. For a while they ate in silence, the clink of cutlery the only sound between them. Finally, Ricardo spoke. "Anna, I want you to know that I don't blame you for any of this. You're as much a victim in this situation as I am." Anna's fork clattered to her plate. "Aren't you angry?" she whispered, her voice hoarse. "I'm carrying another man's child, a child with special needs." Ricardo reached across the table, gently taking her hand. "I was angry at first, yes, but not at you. Never at you." He sighed heavily. "I'm angry at the clinic, at the universe maybe, but mostly I'm just sad, for all of us." Anna's eyes filled with tears. "What are we going to do, Ricardo?" It was the question that had been haunting him for days. He squeezed her hand, choosing his words carefully. "That depends on you, Anna. Legally, you have options, but I want you to know that whatever you decide, I'll support you." "You mean—" Anna trailed off, unable to finish the thought. Ricardo nodded solemnly. "If you choose to terminate the pregnancy, I'll understand. It's your body, your choice. But if you want to continue—" He took a deep breath. "I'm prepared to honor our agreement, to raise this child as my own, regardless of biology or medical challenges." Anna stared at him, stunned. "You'd do that, even knowing it's not your biological child?" "I've had time to think," Ricardo said softly. "And I've realized something. The moment I saw that first ultrasound, the first time I felt a kick, that child became mine in every way that matters. DNA doesn't change that." A sob escaped Anna's throat. She covered her face with her hands, her shoulders shaking. Ricardo moved around the table, kneeling beside her chair and wrapping his arms around her. "I'm so scared," Anna confessed, her words muffled against his shoulder. "I don't know if I'm strong enough for this." Ricardo held her tighter. "You are the strongest person I know, Anna. But you don't have to do this alone. We're in this together if you want to be." They stayed like that for a long time, the food growing cold on the table. As Anna's tears subsided, she pulled back to, "Look at Ricardo. I want to keep the baby," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I know it won't be easy, but I already love this child no matter what." Ricardo felt a weight lift from his chest. He hadn't realized how much he had been hoping for this decision. "Then we'll face whatever comes together," he promised. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity. Ricardo's legal team dug into the fertility clinic's records, uncovering a pattern of negligence that went beyond their case. The lawsuit they filed made headlines, bringing unwanted attention and a flurry of media speculation. Through it all, Ricardo and Anna grew closer. The shared adversity forged a bond between them that transcended their original arrangement. They attended doctor's appointments together, researched Treacher-Collins syndrome, and began to plan for a future neither of them had anticipated. It was during this time that the first whispers of something more sinister began to surface. Ricardo's private investigator, tasked with uncovering every detail about the embryo mix-up, came to him with disturbing news. "Mr. Almeida," the investigator said, his face grim as they met in Ricardo's office, "we've identified the biological father of Ms. Martinez's child." Ricardo leaned forward, his heart racing. "Who is it?" The investigator placed a file on the desk. "His name is Alejandro Vega, and sir, he's a wanted man. Interpol has been after him for years. Drug trafficking, money laundering, suspected ties to terrorist organizations." Ricardo felt the blood drain from his face. "Are you certain?" "DNA doesn't lie, sir, and neither do fingerprints. Vega's sample was in the system due to a prior arrest." Ricardo's mind reeled with the implications. A child born to a notorious criminal. The media frenzy that would ensue if this information leaked. The danger it could bring to Ana and the baby. "Does Vega know?" Ricardo asked, his voice tight. The investigator shook his head. "Not as far as we can tell, but sir, it's only a matter of time. A man like that with his resources. He'll find out eventually." Ricardo dismissed the investigator, then sat in silence, staring out at the city skyline. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the urban landscape. It felt symbolic somehow, as if the light was fading on the simple future he had imagined. He thought of Ana, of the innocent child growing within her. They had already committed to facing the challenges of Treacher-Collins syndrome together. But this was a threat of a different magnitude entirely. Ricardo's jaw clenched with determination. He had built an empire from nothing, overcome countless obstacles in his rise to the top. He would not let this development derail the family he was building, unconventional though it might be. Picking up his phone, he dialed Ana's number. "Can you come over?" he asked when she answered. "There's something we need to discuss." As he waited for her arrival, Ricardo began to formulate a plan. He would protect Ana and this child, no matter the cost, even if it meant going up against one of the most dangerous men in the world. Little did he know that Alejandro Vega was already several steps ahead of him. In a shadowy corner of the world, a man with cold eyes studied a report, a cruel smile playing on his lips. "So," he murmured to himself, "I'm to be a father. How interesting." The board was set. The players were moving into position. And at the center of it all, unaware of the storm gathering around them, a tiny heart beat steadily, growing stronger with each passing day. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across Ricardo's penthouse as he paced anxiously, waiting for Ana to arrive. His mind raced with the implications of what he'd learned about Alejandro Vega. How could he possibly explain this to Ana without terrifying her? And more importantly, how could he protect her and the unborn child from a man with such dangerous connections? The soft ding of the elevator pulled Ricardo from his thoughts. Ana stepped out, her face etched with concern. "Ricardo, what's going on? You sounded worried on the phone." Ricardo gestured for her to sit, taking a deep breath to steady himself. "Ana, there's something I need to tell you. It's about the baby's biological father." Ana's hand instinctively went to her growing belly. "You found him. Who is he?" "His name is Alejandro Vega," Ricardo began, choosing his words carefully. "And I'm afraid the situation is more complicated than we initially thought." Over the next hour, Ricardo explained everything the investigator had uncovered. Ana listened, in stunned silence, her face growing paler with each revelation. When Ricardo finished, the room fell into a heavy quiet, broken only by the distant sounds of the city below. "Ever to us a criminal?" Ana finally whispered, her voice trembling. "The father of my baby is a wanted criminal?" Ricardo moved to sit beside her on the couch, taking her hands in his. "I know this is overwhelming, Ana, but I promise you, I will do everything in my power to keep you and the baby safe." Tears welled in Ana's eyes. "How? Ricardo, if this man is as dangerous as you say, what chance do we have?" "We have resources," Ricardo said firmly. "Money, connections. We can disappear if we need to. Change our identities, start fresh somewhere else." Ana shook her head, a spark of defiance igniting in her eyes. "No, I won't spend my life running. This baby deserves better than that. Ricardo felt a surge of admiration for her strength. You're right, we won't run, we'll fight. They spent the next few hours discussing their options, formulating plans and contingencies. As night fell over the city, Anna rested her head on Ricardo's shoulder, exhausted but resolute. Thank you, she murmured, for standing by me through all of this. You didn't have to. Ricardo wrapped an arm around her, pulling her close. Yes, I did. We're family now, Anna, all three of us. As Anna drifted off to sleep, Ricardo's mind whirred with activity. He would need to beef up security, reach out to contacts in law enforcement, perhaps even consider hiring private protection, whatever it took to keep his newfound family safe. Little did Ricardo know that at that very moment, in a luxurious villa on the outskirts of Bogota, Alejandro Vega was planning his next move. Vega lounged by his infinity pool, a glass of expensive scotch in hand as he listened to his right-hand man's report. It's confirmed, Jefe, the man said. The child is yours. The woman carrying it is named Ana Martinez. She's currently under the protection of Ricardo Almeida, the American businessman. Vega's eyes narrowed. Almeida, I know that name. He's made quite a fortune in real estate and tech investments, hasn't he? Yes, sir. He's worth billions. A slow, predatory smile spread across Vega's face. How interesting. It seems my little indiscretion may prove quite profitable after all. What are your orders, Jefe? Vega sipped his scotch, considering. For now, we watch and wait. I want to know everything about this Ana Martinez and her rich protector, their routines, their weaknesses, their hopes and fears. He set down his glass, his expression hardening. That child is mine by right, and I always claim what's mine. As Vega began to set his plans in motion, life continued in New York, blissfully unaware of the gathering storm. Ricardo threw himself into preparations for the baby's arrival with renewed vigor. He hired the best specialists in Treacher-Collins syndrome, had the nursery redesigned to accommodate potential medical equipment, and even began learning sign language in case the child experienced hearing loss. Anna, for her part, found strength she never knew she possessed. She devoured every book she could find on Treacher-Collins, joined online support groups for parents of children with the condition, and worked with a therapist to process her fears and anxieties. Their relationship deepened in ways neither had anticipated. Late-night cravings became opportunities for heart-to-heart conversations. Doctor's appointments turned into celebrations of each milestone the baby achieved. Slowly but surely, they were becoming a true family. One sunny afternoon, as they sat in the park watching children play, Anna turned to Ricardo with a serious expression. I've been thinking, she said, her hand resting on her now prominent belly, about names for the baby. Ricardo smiled encouragingly. Oh, what did you have in mind? Well, Anna hesitated, then forged ahead. If it's a boy, I was thinking, maybe we could name him after you, Ricardo Jr. Ricardo felt a lump form in his throat. Anna, are you sure? Given everything? We know. Anna took his hand, squeezing it gently. You're this baby's father, Ricardo, in every way that matters. Biology doesn't change that. You've shown me that. Overcome with emotion, Ricardo pulled Anna into a tender embrace. As they held each other, he felt the baby kick against him, as if in agreement. In that moment, all the fear and uncertainty of the past months faded away, replaced by a fierce, protective love. But their moment of peace was short-lived. As they walked back to the car, Ricardo's phone buzzed with an urgent message from his head of security. Sir, the message read, we've detected unusual activity around Ms. Martinez's apartment. Possible surveillance. Recommend immediate relocation. Ricardo's blood ran cold. He ushered Anna into the car, trying to keep his voice calm as he instructed the driver to take them to a secure location. What's going on? Anna asked, sensing his tension. Ricardo took a deep breath. It seems our past may have caught up with us sooner than we expected. But don't worry, he added, seeing the fear in her eyes. I won't let anything happen to you or our child. I promise. As the car wound its way through the city streets, Ricardo's mind raced with possibilities. Had Vega discovered their whereabouts? Was it just a coincidence? Either way, he knew their lives were about to change drastically. What Ricardo didn't know was that Vega had indeed found them, and he was prepared to go to any lengths to claim what he saw as rightfully his. The game of cat and mouse was about to begin in earnest, with the fate of an innocent child hanging in the balance. As night fell over New York City, 3 lives intertwined by fate and circumstance stood on the precipice of a battle that would test the very limits of love, loyalty, and the lengths one would go to protect family. The storm was no longer on the horizon. It was here, and it threatened to sweep them all away in its fury. The safe house was a nondescript brownstone in a quiet Brooklyn neighborhood, its ordinary facade belying the state-of-the-art security systems hidden within. As Ricardo ushered Anna inside, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. "We'll be safe here," he assured her, trying to project a confidence he didn't entirely feel. "My security team has swept the entire block. No one can get in without us knowing." Anna nodded, her face pale but composed. She'd been remarkably strong throughout this ordeal, but Ricardo could see the toll it was taking on her. As she sank into a plush armchair, her hand absently rubbing her swollen belly, he was struck by a fierce wave of protectiveness. "I'm going to make some calls," he said softly. "Try to rest. I'll be right in the next room if you need anything." As Anna closed her eyes, Ricardo stepped into the study, closing the door behind him. He pulled out a burner phone, one of many precautions he'd taken since learning of Vega's identity, and dialed a number he'd hoped he'd never have to use. "This is Almeida," he said when the line connected. "I need to call in that favor." The voice on the other end was gruff, all business. "I was wondering when you'd reach out. How bad is it?" Ricardo sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Bad. We've got a top-tier cartel boss gunning for an unborn child. My child, for all intents and purposes." There was a low whistle from the other end. "That's a hell of a situation you've got yourself into, Ricardo. But I owe you. What do you need?" "Protection, for starters, and information. Anything you can dig up on Alejandro Vega's current operations, his whereabouts, his weaknesses. Consider it done. I'll have a team to you within the hour. And Ricardo, watch your back. Men like Vega, they don't play by any rules but their own." As Ricardo ended the call, he felt a mixture of relief and trepidation. He'd just involved some very powerful, not entirely legal elements in this fight, but if it kept Anna and the baby safe, he'd make a deal with the devil himself. Across the city, in a luxurious hotel suite, Alejandro Vega was also making plans. He stood at the window, gazing out at the glittering New York skyline, a glass of scotch in his hand and a cold smile on his face. "Report," he barked, not turning. From the view, his right-hand man, Carlos, cleared his throat nervously. "We've lost track of the woman, Jefe. Almeida moved her before we could establish a proper surveillance routine." Vega's grip tightened on the glass, but his voice remained eerily calm. "I see. And what of our inside source?" "Still in place, sir. They report that Almeida is pulling out all the stops, private security, off-the-books deals with some heavy hitters. He's prepared for war." At this, Vega finally turned, his dark eyes gleaming with a predatory light. "Good. I do so love a challenge." He drained his glass and set it down with a sharp click. "Almeida thinks he can outmaneuver me. He has no idea what he's up against." Carlos shifted uncomfortably. "Sir, if I may, is this child really worth all this trouble? We have other operations that—" In a flash, Vega was across the room, his hand wrapped around Carlos's throat. "That child is mine," he hissed, his face inches from his subordinates. "My blood, my legacy, and no one. Not some self-made billionaire, not the woman carrying it. No one will keep what's mine from me." "Understood?" Carlos nodded frantically, gasping for air as Vega released him. "Now," Vega continued, smoothing down his suit as if nothing had happened, "intensify our efforts. I want eyes on every hospital, every doctor's office in the city. That baby will be born soon. And when it is, I want to be the first to know." As Carlos scurried from the room, Vega returned to the window, his His reflection stared back at him, cold and determined. He'd built an empire on violence and fear, carved his name into the annals of criminal history. This child, this unexpected twist of fate, represented something he'd never dared hope for. A future, a continuation of his legacy that went beyond mere wealth and power. He would have that child no matter the cost. Back at the safe house, Anna stirred from her uneasy sleep. The baby was kicking vigorously, as if sensing the tension in the air. She placed a hand on her belly, whispering soothing words. "It's okay, little one," she murmured. "We're going to be all right." Ricardo entered the room, his face drawn with worry but softening as he saw Anna awake. He knelt beside her chair, placing his hand next to hers on her stomach. "How are you feeling?" he asked softly. Anna managed a weak smile. "Like I'm carrying the most wanted baby in New York." Ricardo chuckled despite himself. Well, he or she certainly is special. They sat in companionable silence for a moment, both lost in thought. Finally, Anna spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "Ricardo, what if we can't keep the baby safe? What if Vega—" "He won't," Ricardo interrupted fiercely. "I won't let him anywhere near you or our child. I promise you, Anna. Whatever it takes, I will protect this family." Anna searched his face, seeing the determination blazing in his eyes. She nodded slowly, some of the tension leaving her shoulders. "Our family," she repeated, a small smile playing on her lips. "You know, a year ago, I never would have imagined this, being here with you, about to have a baby. It's crazy, isn't it?" Ricardo grinned, some of the old spark returning to his eyes. "Crazy in the best possible way. Though I have to admit I didn't factor in international crime lords when I was planning for fatherhood." They both laughed, the sound a welcome respite from the fear and tension of the past few days. As their laughter faded, Ricardo's expression grew serious once more. "Anna, there's something I need to ask you," he began, his voice low and intense. "I know this isn't the most romantic setting, and God knows the timing is less than ideal. But," he took a deep breath, then plunged ahead, "I love you. I love this baby. And I want us to be a real family, in every sense of the word. Will you marry me?" Anna's eyes widened in shock. Of all the things she'd expected Ricardo to say, this wasn't even on the list. She opened her mouth to respond, but before she could form words, a sharp pain lanced through her abdomen. She gasped, doubling over, Ricardo's face drained of color. "Anna, what's wrong?" "The baby," she managed through gritted teeth. I think it's coming." Ricardo sprang into action, calling for his security team and the doctor he had on standby. As chaos erupted around them, he held Anna's hand tightly, his proposed still hanging in the air between them. "Hold on," he whispered, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "Everything's going to be okay, just hold on." As Anna was rushed to a secure medical facility, Ricardo couldn't shake the feeling that they were racing against more than just time. Somewhere out there, Alejandro Vega was moving his pieces into place, preparing for the final confrontation. The next few hours would determine not just the fate of their child, but the course of all their lives. As the city pulsed around them, oblivious to the drama unfolding in its midst, Ricardo steeled himself for the battle ahead. Whatever came next, he was ready. For Anna, for their child, for the future they dreamed of together, he would face down hell itself. Little did he know, hell was already on its way. The private medical facility was a hive of controlled chaos as Anna was rushed through its secure doors. Ricardo followed close behind, his heart pounding in his chest. The stark white walls and antiseptic smell did little to calm his nerves as he watched a team of medical professionals swarm around Anna, their voices a blur of medical jargon. "Mr. Almeida," a firm voice cut through his haze of worry. He turned to see Dr. Elena Ramirez, the specialist he had personally vetted and hired for this very moment. "We need to prep Anna for an emergency C-section. The baby is in distress and, with the complications of Treacher-Collins syndrome, we can't risk a prolonged labor." Ricardo nodded, trying to keep his voice steady. "Do whatever you need to do, doctor. Just Save them both. Dr. Ramirez's eyes softened with understanding. We'll do everything in our power. Now I need you to change into scrubs if you want to be in the operating room. Can you do that? With a deep breath, Ricardo steeled himself. Yes, I can do that. As he changed, his mind raced with a whirlwind of emotions. Fear for Anna and the baby's safety. Excitement at the imminent arrival of the child he'd come to love as his own, and underlying it all, a gnawing dread that Vega might somehow find them, even here. When he entered the operating room, the sight of Anna on the table, pale and scared but impossibly brave, nearly brought him to his knees. He moved to her side, taking her hand in his. "Hey," he said softly, managing a smile. "Looks like our little one is eager to meet us." Anna's laugh was shaky, tinged with pain and fear. "Ricardo, your proposal, He shook his head, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "Shh, don't worry about that now. We have all the time in the world for answers. Right now, let's focus on bringing our baby into the world, okay?" She nodded, squeezing his hand as another contraction racked her body. Dr. Ramirez appeared at the head of the table, her face masked but her eyes kind. "All right, Anna, Ricardo. We're going to begin. Just try to stay calm and trust us. We'll have your baby here before you know it." The next 30 minutes were a blur of tension and anticipation. Ricardo found himself holding his breath, his eyes darting between Anna's face and the green curtain that obscured the surgery from view. The rhythmic beeping of monitors filled the room, punctuated by the terse commands of Dr. Ramirez to her team. And then, suddenly, a new sound pierced the air. A cry high and insistent, full of life and possibility. "It's a boy," Dr. Ramirez announced, her voice filled with joy. "And he's beautiful." Ricardo felt tears spring to his eyes as a small, wriggling bundle was placed on Anna's chest. Despite the tubes and wires, despite the distinctive facial features that marked the presence of Treacher-Collins syndrome, the baby was the most perfect thing Ricardo had ever seen. "Hello, little one," Anna whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "We've been waiting for you." As Ricardo leaned in, marveling at the tiny fingers and scrunched-up face, he felt a surge of love so powerful it took his breath away. This was his son, biology be damned. In that moment, he silently renewed his vow to protect this fragile new life with everything he had. But even as joy filled the room, darkness was gathering just beyond its doors. Across the city, in his opulent hotel suite, Alejandro Vega received the news he'd been waiting for. His inside source, a nurse he'd bribed with promises of wealth beyond imagination, sent a simple text. "It's done. A boy." Vega's face split into a predatory grin. "Excellent," he purred, turning to Carlos. "Initiate the plan. I want that child." In my arms by sunrise. Back at the medical facility, as Anna was moved to a recovery room and the baby was taken for his first round of tests, Ricardo stepped into the hallway to make a call. He needed to update his security team to ensure that their protective measures were still in place. As he ended the call, a chill ran down his spine. Something felt off. The hallway, which should have been bustling with activity, was eerily quiet. And was that the faint scent of gunpowder in the air? Before he could process these observations, a hand clamped over his mouth from behind, and he felt the cold press of a gun barrel against his temple. "Not a sound, Mr. Almeida," a voice hissed in his ear. "Or your little family in there won't live to see another sunrise." Ricardo's mind raced. How had Vega's men infiltrated the facility? What had happened to his security team? And most importantly, how could he protect Anna and their newborn son? As he was roughly dragged down the hallway, away from the recovery room where his heart lay, Ricardo knew that the real battle was only just beginning. The next few hours would determine not just his fate, but the fate of the fragile new life that had already captured his soul. In the recovery room, blissfully unaware of the danger closing in, Anna cradled her son, marveling at his tiny features. "Ricardo Jr.," she murmured, testing out the name. "What do you think, little one? Are you ready for a big adventure?" The baby yawned, his small face scrunching up in a way that made Anna's heart melt. She had no idea of the storm that was about to break over them all, or the lengths to which both Ricardo and Vega would go to claim this child as their own. As the night deepened, the stage was set for a confrontation that would push the boundaries of love, loyalty, and the very definition of family. In the balance hung not just lives, but the future itself. Ricardo's mind raced as he was marched down the sterile hallway, the gun pressed firmly against his back. Years of business negotiations and high-stakes deals had honed his ability to think under pressure, and now he called upon every ounce of that skill. "You're making a mistake," he said, keeping his voice low and steady. "Whatever Vega's paying you, I can double it, triple it." The man behind him chuckled, a humorless sound. That sent chills down Ricardo's spine. "This isn't about money, Mr. Almeida. This is about loyalty, something you wouldn't understand." Before Ricardo could respond, they reached a service elevator. As the doors slid open, he caught a glimpse of his captor in the reflective surface, a hard-faced man with cold eyes and a scar running down his left cheek. "Where are you taking me?" Ricardo asked as they descended. "To meet the boss, of course. He's very eager to have a chat with you about his son." Ricardo's heart clenched at the casual way the man referred to the baby, his son regardless of biology. He had to find a way out of this, had to get back to Anna and the child before Vega could reach them. As the elevator doors opened onto a dimly lit parking garage, Ricardo saw his chance. In one fluid motion, he dropped to the ground, sweeping, his leg out to catch his captor off balance. The man stumbled, his grip on the gun loosening just enough for Ricardo to make a grab for it. They grappled, the sound of their struggle echoing in the cavernous space. Ricardo, fueled by desperation and love, managed to wrench the weapon free. Without hesitation, he brought the butt of the gun down hard on his attacker's temple. The man crumpled to the ground, unconscious. Ricardo stood over him, breathing heavily, the gun now firm in his grasp. He had mere moments before someone would come looking for them. Back in the recovery room, Anna's peaceful bubble was shattered by the sound of raised voices and running feet in the hallway. She clutched her newborn son closer, her heart racing. "What's going on?" she asked the nurse who had been checking the baby's vitals. The young woman's face was pale with fear. I don't know. We're supposed to stay here and keep the door locked until security gives us the all clear." Anna's mind immediately went to Ricardo. Where was he? Was he safe? She looked down at her son, his tiny face scrunched up in sleep, blissfully unaware of the danger surrounding them. "We can't stay here," Anna said, her voice filled with a determination that surprised even her. "We're sitting ducks. We need to move." The nurse hesitated, torn between protocol and the fear in Anna's eyes. "But Ms. Martinez, you've just had major surgery. You shouldn't be—" "Help me up," Anna interrupted, already struggling to sit upright. "Now." Reluctantly, the nurse helped Anna into a wheelchair, the baby still cradled in her arms. As they peered out into the hallway, the facility seemed to have descended into chaos. Alarms blared, and the sound of shouting echoed from multiple directions. "Which way?" Anna asked, her eyes darting back and forth. The nurse pointed to a service corridor. "That leads to the back exit, but I don't know if it's safe." "It's safer than staying here," Anna said firmly. "Let's go." As they made their way down the dimly lit corridor, Anna's mind raced. Where was Ricardo? Had Vega's men found him? And how had they managed to infiltrate what was supposed to be an impenetrable fortress of security? Meanwhile, in the parking garage, Ricardo was faced with a crucial decision. He could try to find Anna and the baby, risking running into more of Vega's men along the way. Or he could go after Vega himself, cutting off the snake's head and ending this nightmare once and for all. The choice was made for him when he heard the squeal of tires. A sleek black SUV pulled into the garage, and out stepped Alejandro Vega himself, flanked by two heavily armed guards. Vega's eyes locked onto Ricardo, a cold smile spreading across his face. "Mr. Almeida," he called out, his voice echoing in the cavernous space. "I believe we're overdue for a chat about our shared interests." Ricardo stepped out from behind the pillar he'd been using for cover, the gun trained steadily on Vega. "There's nothing to discuss, Vega. That child is mine. Anna is my family. And you're going to leave us alone, or I swear to God I'll end this right here." Vega's laugh was chilling. "Oh, Ricardo, may I call you Ricardo? You have no idea what you're dealing with. That boy carries my blood, my legacy, and I always claim what's mine." As the two men faced off, the air thick with tension, neither was aware of the drama unfolding several floors above. Anna, powered by a mother's instinct and sheer force of will, was making her way through the labyrinthine corridors of the medical facility, her newborn son clutched tightly to her chest. With each step, with each turn, she was moving closer to a confrontation that would change all their lives forever. The pieces were in motion, the players converging for a final, climactic showdown. In the parking garage, Ricardo's finger tightened. On the trigger, Vega's guards reached for their weapons, and somewhere in the building a baby's cry pierced the night, a sound of innocence in a world suddenly filled with danger and uncertainty. The stage was set for a resolution that would test the very limits of love, loyalty, and the true meaning of family. As the night deepened, the fate of Ricardo, Anna, and their newborn son hung in the balance, with Alejandro Vega poised to claim what he believed was rightfully his. The crucible was heating up, and soon the true mettle of each player would be tested in ways none of them could have imagined. The tension in the parking garage was palpable, an electric current running between Ricardo and Alejandro Vega. Ricardo's hand remained steady, the gun trained on Vega's chest, but his mind raced with calculations. He knew he was outgunned and outmanned, but the thought of Anna and their newborn son gave him a strength he never knew he possessed. Vega, for his part, seemed almost amused by the standoff. His dark eyes glittered with a predatory light as he took a step forward, ignoring the weapon pointed at him. "You know, Ricardo," he said, his voice smooth as silk, "in another life, we might have been friends. Two self-made men rising to the top through sheer will and determination. It's almost poetic that fate has brought us together like this." Ricardo's jaw clenched. "We are nothing alike, Vega. I built my empire through hard work and innovation. You've left a trail of blood and misery in your wake." Vega's smile widened, showing teeth. "And yet here we are, both willing to do whatever it takes to claim what we believe is ours. Tell me, how far are you willing to go for a child that isn't even yours by blood?" "He's mine in every way that matters," Ricardo growled, "and I'll die before I let you near him." As the two men faced off, neither aware of the drama unfolding above them, Anna continued her desperate journey through the medical facility. The nurse who had been helping her had been called away to assist with other patients, leaving Anna to navigate the maze-like corridors on her own. Every movement sent shards of pain through her body, a stark reminder of the major surgery she had undergone mere hours ago. But Anna gritted her teeth and pushed on, her newborn son cradled protectively against her chest. "It's okay, sweetheart," she whispered to the baby, who had started to fuss. "Mommy's got you. We're going to find Daddy and get out of here." As she rounded a corner, she nearly collided with a man in a dark suit. Her heart leapt into her throat as she recognized him as one of Vega's men from the photos Ricardo had shown her. The man's eyes widened in recognition. "Ms. Martinez," he said, reaching for her. "You need to come with me. Mr. Vega is very eager to meet his son." Anna's survival instincts kicked into overdrive. Without thinking, she swung the IV pole she had been using for support, catching the man off guard. It connected with his temple with a sickening thud, and he crumpled to the ground. Breathing heavily, Anna stared at the unconscious form for a moment before snapping back to reality. She had to move, had to find Ricardo before more of Vega's men showed up. Back in the parking garage, the standoff was reaching its breaking point. Vega's guards had their weapons drawn, creating a deadly triangle with Ricardo at its center. "You're out of options, Mr. Almeida," Vega said, his amusement giving way to impatience. "Put down the gun, and I promise you'll get to say goodbye to Anna and the child before we leave. Resist, and well, I can't guarantee their safety." Ricardo's mind raced. He knew Vega was bluffing. He wouldn't risk harming the baby, but Anna was another matter entirely. He needed to buy time to find a way out of this impossible situation. "Why?" Ricardo asked, desperation creeping into his voice. "Why this child? You could have a dozen children with your resources. Why risk everything for this one?" Something flickered in Vega's eyes, a hint of vulnerability quickly masked by steel. "Because he's mine," Vega snarled. "My blood, my legacy. You of all people should understand the importance of leaving something behind, of ensuring your name lives on." As Vega spoke, Ricardo caught a flicker of movement behind one of the concrete pillars. His heart leapt as he recognized Anna, wheelchair-bound. But determined, their son clutched tightly to her chest. In that moment, time seemed to slow. Ricardo saw the future stretched out before him, a life on the run, always looking over their shoulders, never truly safe. But it was a future with Anna and their son, a future filled with love and possibility. He made his decision in a heartbeat. "You're right about one thing, Vega," Ricardo said, his voice steady. "I do understand the importance of legacy, but legacy isn't about blood or DNA. It's about love, about the values you pass on." He lowered the gun slowly. "And I choose love." Vega's triumphant smile froze as he followed Ricardo's gaze. His eyes widened as he spotted Anna and the baby. "No!" Vega roared, lunging forward, but Ricardo was already moving. He tackled Vega to the ground as chaos erupted around them. Gunshots echoed through the garage as Vega's men opened fire. Anna screamed, shielding the baby with her body as bullets ricocheted off concrete pillars. She wheeled herself behind a nearby car, heart pounding. On the ground, Ricardo and Vega grappled, each fighting with the desperation of men who knew everything was on the line. Vega landed a vicious blow to Ricardo's ribs, but Ricardo countered with an elbow to Vega's jaw. "Anna, run!" Ricardo shouted, struggling to keep Vega pinned. Anna hesitated, torn between fleeing to safety and not wanting to leave Ricardo behind. But one look at her son's frightened face steeled her resolve. She began to wheel herself towards the exit, praying she'd find help. As she reached the ramp leading out of the garage, a black SUV came screeching around the corner. Anna's heart sank, thinking it was more of Vega's men. But as the vehicle skidded to a stop, she saw familiar faces, Ricardo's security team, finally arriving on the scene. "Miss Martinez!" the lead agent called out, rushing to her side. "Are you all right? Where's Mr. Almeida?" Anna pointed back towards the firefight. "He's fighting Vega! Please, you have to help him!" The security team sprang into action, their arrival turning the tide of the battle. As they engaged Vega's men, Ricardo finally gained the upper hand in his struggle with the crime lord. With a final, desperate surge of strength, Ricardo slammed Vega's head against the concrete floor, knocking him unconscious. Panting heavily, Ricardo staggered to his feet. He looked up to see Anna wheeling towards him, their son still clutched tightly to her chest. The sight of them, safe and whole, made his knees weak with relief. "Ricardo!" Anna cried, reaching for him. He fell to his knees beside her wheelchair, enveloping both her and the baby in a fierce embrace. "You're okay," he murmured, his voice choked with emotion. "You're both okay." As the sounds of sirens filled the air and Ricardo's security team secured the scene, the little family clung to each other, hardly daring to believe that the nightmare was finally over. But as Ricardo looked down at the unconscious form of Alejandro Vega, he knew that this was just the beginning. The road ahead would be long and fraught with challenges, but as he held Anna and their son, he knew that together they could face anything. In the midst of chaos and gunfire, surrounded by danger and uncertainty, a family had been forged. And nothing, not biology, not criminal empires, not even fate itself, could tear them apart. The following days were a blur of police statements, medical examinations, and heightened security measures. Ricardo, Anna, and their newborn son were moved to a safe house outside the city, a sprawling estate with round-the-clock protection. As Anna recuperated from her ordeal, cradling little Ricardo Jr. in her arms, she marveled at the strength of the bond that had formed between them all. Ricardo rarely left their side, his face a mixture of love, worry, and determination. "What happens now?" Anna asked one evening as they sat on the terrace, watching the sun set over the manicured gardens. The baby slept peacefully in her arms, his tiny chest rising and falling with each breath. Ricardo sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Vega's in custody, But his organization is vast. There will be trials, probably attempts at retaliation. We'll need to be careful for a while. Anna nodded, her face solemn. And the baby? Legally, I mean. What happens with him? Ricardo turned to her, his eyes intense. Anna, I meant what I said before. Biology doesn't matter to me. This is our son in every way that counts. If you'll have me, I want us to be a real family. Tears welled in Anna's eyes as she remembered his proposal in the hospital, interrupted by the onset of labor. Ricardo, are you sure? This isn't the life you signed up for when you first decided to have a child. He reached out, gently cupping her face in his hand. No, it's not. It's so much more than I ever could have imagined. Anna, I love you, both of you. Whatever comes next, I want to face it together. Anna leaned into his touch, her heart swelling with emotion. Yes, she whispered. Yes to all of it. To being a family, to facing whatever comes next, together. Their lips met in a tender kiss, full of promise and hope for the future. As they parted, little Ricardo stirred, opening his eyes to gaze up at them. Despite the challenges of Treacher-Collins syndrome, his face was beautiful to them, a perfect blend of strength and vulnerability. Hello, my brave boy, Ricardo murmured, gently stroking the baby's cheek. You've had quite the adventure already, haven't you? But don't worry, your mama and papa are here and we're not going anywhere. As the new family sat together, basking in the glow of their love and commitment, they were unaware of the forces still moving against them. In a maximum security prison, Alejandro Vega sat in his cell, his face a mask of cold fury. A guard approached, slipping a note through the food slot before quickly walking away. Vega unfolded the paper, a slow smile spreading across his face, as he read its contents. Soon, he whispered to himself. Very soon. Meanwhile, in a nondescript office building in Washington, D.C., a group of stern-faced individuals gathered around a conference table. Photos of Ricardo, Anna, and baby Ricardo were spread out before them. The situation has become too volatile, one of them said, his voice grave. The child's unique genetic makeup, combined with Vega's resources and Almeida's influence. It's a powder keg waiting to explode. Another nodded in agreement. We need to contain this for national security. The leader of the group, a silver-haired woman with piercing blue eyes, leaned forward. Initiate Operation Cradle. We move in 48 hours. As the meeting adjourned, the players in this high-stakes game continued to move their pieces, unaware of the new threats converging on the fragile happiness Ricardo and Anna had found. Back at the safe house, blissfully unaware of the storm gathering on the horizon, Ricardo and Anna put their son to bed. As they stood over his crib, watching him, "Sleep?" Ricardo wrapped his arm around Anna's waist. "I was thinking," he said softly, "maybe we should have a small wedding. Just us, the baby, and a few close friends. What do you think?" Anna turned to him, her eyes shining with love. "I think that sounds perfect." As they sealed the decision, with a kiss the future stretched out before them, full of challenges, yes, but also brimming with love, hope, and the unbreakable bonds of family. Little did they know that their greatest test was yet to come. The forces aligning against them, Vega's criminal empire, shadowy government agencies, and secrets yet to be revealed, would push them to their limits and beyond. But for now, in this moment of peace, Ricardo and Anna allowed themselves to dream of the life they would build together. A life that, despite its unconventional beginnings, was rooted in the most powerful force of all: love. As night fell over the safe house, the little family slept, their dreams filled with hope for the future. And somewhere in the darkness, the pieces of a new game were being set. A game that would determine not just their fate, but potentially the fate of nations. The story of Ricardo, Anna, and their extraordinary son was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. The next few weeks passed in a whirlwind of activity as Ricardo and Anna prepared for their intimate wedding ceremony. Despite the constant presence of security personnel and the lingering threat of Vega's organization, they were determined to carve out a semblance of normalcy for themselves and their son. On a crisp autumn morning, with the leaves of the estate's trees painted in vibrant hues of red and gold, Ricardo and Anna exchanged vows in a small gazebo overlooking a serene lake. Little Ricardo, now 2 months old, gurgled happily in the arms of Ricardo's trusted assistant, Maria, who had become like family over the years. As Anna walked down the makeshift aisle, radiant in a simple white dress, Ricardo felt his breath catch in his throat. Despite everything they had been through, or perhaps because of it, his love for her had only grown stronger. When they kissed, as husband and wife, sealing their commitment to each other and their unconventional family, there wasn't a dry eye among the small gathering of guests. The reception was a joyous affair, filled with laughter, music, and the warm glow of new beginnings. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the manicured lawns, Ricardo pulled Anna close for a dance. "Are you happy?" he murmured, in her ear as they swayed to the soft music. Anna leaned back to look into his eyes, her own shining with unshed tears of joy. "More than I ever thought possible," she replied. "Thank you, Ricardo, for everything." As they danced, lost in their own world, neither noticed the brief exchange between two of the security guards at the perimeter of the party. One guard discreetly passed a small package to the other, who quickly pocketed it before resuming his patrol. Later that night, as the newlyweds retired to their suite and the baby slept peacefully in the nursery next door, the second guard slipped away from his post. In the privacy of his quarters, he opened the package to reveal a high-tech communications device. "Sparrow to nest," he whispered into the device. "The eagles have roosted, awaiting further instructions." Miles away, in a dimly lit operations center, the silver-haired woman from the Washington meeting leaned forward, her eyes sharp as she listened to the report. "Excellent," she replied. "Maintain surveillance. We move on schedule." As she ended the transmission, she turned to her team. "Prepare the extraction team. Remember, our primary objective is the child. Almeida and the woman are secondary concerns." Back at the estate, blissfully unaware of the forces converging around them, Ricardo and Anna lay entwined in each other's arms, basking in the afterglow of their wedding night. "What are you thinking?" Anna asked, tracing lazy patterns on Ricardo's chest. He smiled, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "I'm thinking about how lucky I am. How out of all the twists and turns life has thrown at us, we ended up here together." Anna propped herself up on one elbow, her expression turning serious. "Ricardo, there's something I've been wanting to ask you. About the baby's condition." Ricardo tensed slightly, but nodded for her to continue. "I know we've been focused on keeping him safe from Vega, but what about his future? The doctors said he'll need multiple surgeries as he grows. How do we prepare for that?" Ricardo sat up, pulling Anna into his arms. "We'll face it together, one step at a time. I've already been in touch with the best specialists in Treacher-Collins syndrome. We'll give him every opportunity, every advantage. We can." Anna nodded, burrowing closer into his embrace. "I just want him to have a normal life, you know, to be happy, to feel loved." "He will," Ricardo assured her. "Between the two of us, there's nothing we can't handle." As they drifted off to sleep, holding each other close, the night seemed to hold its breath, the calm before the storm that was about to break over their newfound happiness. In his maximum security cell, Alejandro Vega sat perfectly still, his eyes closed in meditation. To anyone observing, he appeared the picture of defeat, a once powerful crime lord brought low. But behind his eyelids, Vega's mind was racing, piecing together the complex puzzle that would lead to his freedom and his revenge. The guard who had slipped him the note weeks ago appeared at his cell door, right on schedule. "Dinner time, Vega," he called out gruffly. As Vega stood to receive his tray, the guard leaned in close, his voice barely above a whisper. "It's set, 3 days." Vega's face remained impassive, but a glimmer of satisfaction flashed in his dark eyes. He gave an almost imperceptible nod as he took the tray, careful not to draw attention from the other guards or inmates. As he sat on his bunk, mechanically spooning the bland prison food into his mouth, Vega's mind raced with possibilities. 3 days. Just 3 more days until he would taste freedom again, until he could set in motion the plans he had been meticulously crafting during his incarceration. His thoughts turned to Ricardo Almeida and the child, his child. A cruel smile played at the corners of his mouth. They had no idea what was coming. This time, he would leave nothing to chance. This time, he would reclaim what was rightfully his. Meanwhile, back at the Almeida estate, life settled into a new routine. Ricardo worked from home as much as possible, dividing his time between running his business empire and doting on his new family. Anna threw herself into motherhood with a passion that surprised even her, researching everything she could about Treacher-Collins syndrome and early childhood development. Little Ricardo, or RJ as they had taken to calling him, was thriving despite the challenges of his condition. His bright eyes and infectious laugh brought joy to everyone around him. Even the hardened security personnel couldn't help but smile when the baby gurgled happily at them. One crisp morning, as Anna was feeding RJ in the nursery, she noticed something odd. The baby seemed fascinated by a particular spot on the wall, his gaze fixed and unwavering. "What is it, sweetie?" Anna cooed, following his line of sight. At first she saw nothing unusual, but as she looked closer, a chill ran down her spine. There, almost invisible against the pale blue paint, was a tiny lens. Her heart racing, Anna forced herself to act normally. She finished feeding RJ, all the while fighting the urge to scream or run. Once the baby was settled in his crib, she calmly walked out of the nursery and went in search of Ricardo. She found him in his study, poring over some documents. One look at her face, and he knew something was wrong. "Anna, what is it?" he asked, rising from his desk. She put a finger to her lips, motioning for him to follow her. Once they were outside in the relative safety of the gardens, she told him what she had seen. Ricardo's face darkened with anger and concern. "Are you sure?" Anna nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm positive, Ricardo. Someone's been watching us, watching our baby." Ricardo pulled out his phone, ready to call his head of security, but Anna stopped him. "Wait," she said, her mind racing. What if it's not Vega? What if it's someone else?" Ricardo paused, realization dawning in his eyes. "The government," he breathed. "They've been unusually interested in our case from the beginning." Anna's eyes widened with fear. "What do we do?" Ricardo's jaw set with determination. "We get out. Now. Before they realize we're onto them." As they hurried back to the house, trying to maintain an appearance of normalcy, neither of them noticed the dark SUV pulling up to the estate's gates, or the team of heavily armed individuals preparing to move in. Inside the house, Ricardo and Anna moved with controlled urgency, gathering essentials and preparing RJ for a hasty departure. They had rehearsed emergency protocols, but the reality of the situation made their hearts race with adrenaline and fear. Just as they were about to head for the secret exit in the wine cellar, the sound of breaking glass and shouted commands shattered the quiet of the house. "Go!" Ricardo urged Anna, pressing a go-bag into her hands and ushering her towards the hidden passage. "Take RJ and go. I'll hold them off and meet you at the rendezvous point." Anna hesitated, torn between the need to protect her child and the fear of leaving Ricardo behind. "I can't leave you," she said, her voice breaking. Ricardo cupped her, face in his hands, his eyes intense. "You have to, for RJ. I promise I'll find you. Now go." With a final desperate kiss, Anna turned and fled, cradling RJ close to her chest as she disappeared into the secret passage. Ricardo took a deep breath, steeling himself for what was to come. He could hear the intruders getting closer, their heavy footsteps echoing through the house. As he prepared to face whatever force had come for his family, Ricardo made a silent vow. He would protect Anna and RJ at any cost, and when this was over, he would uncover the truth behind the web of secrets and lies that had entangled them all. The sound of splintering wood announced the breach of his study door. Ricardo stood tall, ready to fight for everything he held dear. The game was far from over. In fact, it was about to enter a new, even more dangerous phase. The world seemed to move in slow motion as Ricardo faced the intruders bursting into his study. Time stretched and compressed, each heartbeat an eternity, each breath a fleeting moment. He recognized the sleek professional gear of a government tactical team, not Vega's men, but perhaps an even more formidable enemy. "Mr. Almeida," the lead agent barked, weapon trained on Ricardo's chest. "Where is the child?" Ricardo's mind raced, buying time. What child? What is the meaning of this invasion? The agent's eyes narrowed behind his tactical goggles. Don't play games, Almeida. The boy. Where is he? I don't know what you're talking about, Ricardo replied, his voice steady despite the fear coursing through his veins. But I do know that you're trespassing on private property. I suggest you leave before my security team arrives. A humorless chuckle escaped the agent's lips. Your security team has been neutralized. Now I'll ask one more time. Where is the child? Ricardo's jaw clenched, his mind whirring with possibilities. He needed to stall to give Anna and RJ more time to escape. With a subtle movement, he activated the silent alarm hidden under his desk, a last-ditch measure that would alert his most trusted allies. If you're looking for my son, Ricardo said slowly, I'm afraid you've missed him. He and my wife are on vacation. I'd be happy to give you their itinerary, but I'll need to see some identification and a warrant first. The lead agent's posture shifted, tension radiating through his body. Secure the premises, he ordered his team. Tear this place apart if you have to. Find the woman and the baby. As the other agents dispersed, the leader kept his weapon trained on Ricardo. You're making a big mistake, Mr. Almeida. We're not the enemy here. That child is more important than you can possibly imagine. Ricardo's eyes hardened. He's my son. That's all I need to know. Meanwhile, deep within the hidden passage, Anna stumbled forward in near darkness, one arm cradling RJ close to her chest, the other outstretched to feel her way along the rough stone walls. The baby, sensing his mother's distress, remained eerily quiet. His tiny fingers curled tightly around the fabric of her shirt. Anna's mind raced with a whirlwind of emotions, fear for Ricardo left behind to face unknown assailants, determination to protect her child at all costs, and a gnawing uncertainty about what lay ahead. The passage seemed to stretch endlessly, each step taking her further from the life she had come to love and closer to an uncertain future. Finally, after what felt like hours but was likely only minutes, Anna felt a rush of cool air. She had reached the exit, concealed behind a false panel in an old groundskeeper's shed at the edge of the estate. Pausing to catch her breath and soothe RJ, who had started to fuss, Anna peered cautiously out of the shed. The pre-dawn light cast long shadows across the manicured lawns, and in the distance she could see the flashing lights of emergency vehicles at the main house. Her heart clenched at the thought of Ricardo alone and outnumbered, but she knew she had to press on. Steeling herself, Anna slipped out of the shed and made her way towards the rendezvous point Ricardo had drilled into her memory during their contingency planning. As she moved through the woods bordering the estate, every snapping twig and rustling leaf sent a jolt of fear through her body. RJ, perhaps sensing the gravity of the situation, remained mercifully quiet, his eyes wide and watchful in the dim light. After what felt like an eternity of cautious progress, Anna finally reached the predetermined location, a nondescript storage facility on the outskirts of town. With trembling hands, she punched in the code Ricardo had given her, sighing in relief as the gate swung open. Inside the climate-controlled unit, she found everything Ricardo had promised: a change of clothes, cash, burner phones, and most importantly, a car with false plates. As she changed RJ's diaper and prepared a bottle from the supplies stashed in the unit, Anna allowed herself a moment of hope. Maybe they had made it. Maybe they were safe. But as she settled RJ into the car seat and prepared to drive away, flash of movement in her rearview mirror made her blood run cold. A black SUV, identical to the ones she had glimpsed at the estate, was pulling into the storage facility. With shaking hands, Anna started the car. She had to get away, had to protect RJ at all costs. As she peeled out of the storage unit, tires squealing on the asphalt, she sent up a silent prayer for Ricardo's safety and for guidance in the perilous journey ahead. Back at the estate, Ricardo found himself zip-tied to a chair in his own study, facing the silver-haired woman who seemed to be in charge of the operation. Her piercing blue eyes studied him with a mixture of frustration and grudging respect. "Mr. Almeida," she began, her voice crisp and authoritative, "I hope you understand the gravity of your situation. The child you've been harboring is of vital importance to national security. His unique genetic makeup, combined with the circumstances of his conception, make him a person of extreme interest to certain parties. Ricardo's mind raced, piecing together the implications of her words. "You're not just after RJ because of Vega's connection," he said slowly. "There's something else, isn't there? Something about his Treacher-Collins syndrome." A flicker of surprise crossed the woman's face before she schooled her features back into a mask of professional detachment. "You're a clever man, Mr. Almeida. Too clever for your own good, perhaps. Yes, there's more to this situation than you know. That child could be the key to advancements in genetic engineering that could change the course of human history." Ricardo's jaw clenched. "He's not a lab rat, he's a baby, our son." The woman leaned in, her voice low and intense. "He's the culmination of years of clandestine research and an accident of fate. And now, thanks to your interference, he's in wind. Do you have any idea of the dangers he faces? Vega's organization is just the tip of the iceberg. There are forces at play here that you can't begin to comprehend." As if on cue, an agent burst into the room. "Ma'am, we've got a problem. Vega's escaped." The silver-haired woman's eyes widened in genuine alarm. She turned back to Ricardo, her composure cracking for the first time. "Where is the child, Mr. Almeida? Where did you send them? You have no idea what you've done." Ricardo met her gaze, unflinchingly. "No," he said, his voice firm with resolve. "You have no idea what I'm capable of when it comes to protecting my family." As sirens wailed in the distance and the first rays of dawn broke over the horizon, the players in this high-stakes game found themselves at a crossroads. Anna, fleeing into an uncertain future with RJ. Ricardo, captive but unbowed, guarding secrets that could reshape the world. And somewhere out there, Alejandro Vega, a freed predator with vengeance in his heart and a mission of his own. The stage was set for a confrontation that would test the limits of love, loyalty, and the very fabric of reality itself. As the new day dawned, fraught with danger and possibility, one thing was certain: nothing would ever be the same again. Anna's heart pounded in her chest as she navigated the winding back roads, constantly checking her rearview mirror for signs of pursuit. RJ, sensing his mother's distress, had started to fuss in his car seat. Anna murmured soothing words, trying to calm both the baby and herself. "It's okay, sweetheart," she whispered. "We're going to be all right. Daddy will find us. He always does." As the sun climbed higher in the sky, Anna's mind raced with possibilities. Where could she go that was truly safe? Who could she trust? The weight of responsibility for her son's safety pressed down on her, threatening to overwhelm her. Suddenly, a memory surfaced, a conversation with Ricardo months ago, when they were first discussing contingency plans. "If everything goes wrong," he had said, his eyes intense, "if you can't reach me and you don't know who to trust, there's one person you can always count on. Her name is Sofia Reyes. She's an old friend, someone who owes me a debt she can never repay. I'll give you her contact information, but memorize it and then destroy it. If you ever need her, tell her the phoenix rises at dawn. She'll know it's from me." Anna's hands tightened on the steering wheel. It was a long shot, but it was the only option she had left. Setting her jaw with determination, she turned the car towards the interstate. She had a long drive ahead of her. Meanwhile, back at the Almeida estate, Ricardo was locked in a battle of wills with the silver-haired woman, who had identified herself only as Director Hawthorne. "Mr. Almeida," Hawthorne said, her voice a mixture of frustration and grudging. "Respect. I don't think you understand the forces you're dealing with here. Your son's genetic makeup isn't just rare. It's unprecedented. The combination of Vega's DNA and the specific mutation that caused his Treacher-Collins syndrome has created something extraordinary." Ricardo's eyes narrowed. "What are you saying? That RJ is some kind of superhuman?" Hawthorne sighed, pinching the bridge of her nose. "Not in the way you're thinking, but his cells have shown remarkable regenerative properties. Properties that could revolutionize medicine, extend human lifespans, maybe even cure diseases we thought incurable. But in the wrong hands he becomes a lab rat," Ricardo finished, his voice hard. Or worse, a weapon. Hawthorne nodded grimly. Exactly. And now with Vega on the loose and your wife in the wind with the child, we're racing against time. There are other interested parties out there, Mr. Almeida. Parties who wouldn't hesitate to dissect that child to get what they want. For the first time since this ordeal began, Ricardo felt a flicker of doubt. Had he made the right choice in sending Anna and RJ away? But no. He couldn't trust this woman or the shadowy agency she represented. His family's safety had to come first. I've told you, he said, meeting Hawthorne's gaze steadily. I don't know where they've gone, and even if I did, I wouldn't tell you. Hawthorne opened her mouth to respond, but was interrupted by an urgent knock at the door. One of her agents entered, his face pale. Director, he said, his voice tense, we've just received word. There's been an incident at the prison where Vega was being held. It's gone dark, no communications in or out, and we've lost track of Vega's transport. Hawthorne's eyes widened in alarm. She turned back to Ricardo, her composure cracking. Mr. Almeida, I'm going to ask you one last time, for the sake of your wife and child, for the sake of national security, where are they? Ricardo met her gaze unflinchingly. I've already told you, I don't know. As Hawthorne stormed out of the room, barking orders to her team, Ricardo allowed himself a small, grim smile. He had bought Anna and RJ some time. Now he just had to figure out how to escape and find them before Vega or anyone else did. Little did any of them know that fate was already in motion, drawing the players in this high-stakes game towards an inevitable collision. Miles away, in a nondescript sedan with tinted windows, Alejandro Vega sat in the back seat, his dark eyes gleaming with anticipation. The prison break had gone off without a hitch, thanks to the network of loyal operatives he had cultivated over the years. Where to, boss? His driver asked, glancing in the rearview mirror. Vega's lips curled into a cold smile. We have a family reunion to attend, he said, his voice laced with menace. But first, we need to make a stop. There's someone who owes me a debt, someone who might know where Almeida would hide his precious family. As the sedan merged onto the highway, Vega's mind raced with possibilities. He would reclaim his son, yes, but more than that, he would make Ricardo Almeida pay for every moment of humiliation he had endured in prison. This was no longer just about legacy or biology, it was about vengeance. The threads of fate were drawing tighter, pulling Anna, Ricardo, Vega, and the mysterious government agents towards an inevitable confrontation. At the center of it all was little RJ, blissfully unaware of the storm raging around him, his unique genetic makeup holding secrets that could change the world. Anna, driven by a mother's fierce protective instinct, pressed on towards her destination, the home of Sofia Reyes, Ricardo's enigmatic friend and their last hope for safety. With each mile that passed, she felt both relief at putting distance between them and their pursuers, and a growing anxiety about what lay ahead. Ricardo, still captive but far from defeated, worked tirelessly to free himself from his bonds. His mind raced with plans and contingencies, fueled by an unwavering determination to reunite with his family and protect them from the forces closing in. Director Hawthorne, realizing the gravity of the situation with Vega's escape, mobilized every resource at her disposal. The race was on, not just to find RJ, but to prevent a potential catastrophe if the child's genetic secrets fell into the wrong hands. As night fell, the players in this high-stakes drama hurtled towards their destinies, each driven by their own motivations: love, greed, duty, and revenge. The stage was set for a final confrontation that would determine not just the fate of one family, but potentially the future of humanity itself. In the quiet of her car, Anna looked at her sleeping son in the rearview mirror. Despite the fear and uncertainty churning within her, she felt a surge of love and resolve. Whatever came next, she would face it head-on for RJ's sake. "We're almost there, little one," she whispered. "Just hold on a little longer. We're going to make it through this together." As the lights of a small town appeared on the horizon, Anna took a deep breath, steeling herself for what lay ahead. The final chapter of their ordeal was about to unfold, and the outcome was far from certain. But one thing was clear: the bonds of family, forged in the crucible of adversity, would be tested as never before. And in the end, it would be love, not biology, not science, not power, that would determine the true meaning of legacy.